Did you know that life on Earth has experienced several global apocalypses? The Paleozoic era, spanning from 600 million years ago to 250 million years ago, witnessed several of the largest mass extinctions that significantly altered the planet's biosphere. During this period, evolution reached remarkable heights. The first multicellular organisms appeared, and by the end of the era, life on land was diverse, ranging from giant insects to the first reptiles. The first major extinction, known as the Ordovician Silurian, occurred around 460 million years ago, leading to the disappearance of nearly 85% of marine species. This event was caused by global cooling and changes in sea level, which destroyed many coral reefs that were the basis of the marine ecosystem at the time. The second extinction, the Devonian, occurred approximately 360 million years ago and also affected marine life, but its causes are still debated among scientists. One possible cause is climate change and hypoxia in the oceans, which led to the disappearance of around 90% of species. The Permian extinction, which occurred around 250 million years ago, was the most catastrophic, wiping out 97% of all marine and 72% of terrestrial species. Known as the Great Dying, this event may have been caused by volcanic activity, leading to rapid climate change, increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and the destruction of ecosystems. The Paleozoic era was the stage of an incredible drama, where new forms of life emerged and disappeared over hundreds of millions of years, leaving behind only fossilized traces. During this time, Earth experienced numerous geological changes. Continents moved, formed, and dissolved, influencing climate conditions. For example, during this period, the supercontinent Pangaea formed and eventually broke apart into the modern continents. These changes created new ecological niches, allowing some species to adapt and survive, while others could not cope with the changes. By the end of the Paleozoic, life on Earth was on the brink of a new era, with reptiles dominating the land and marine life becoming more diverse with the appearance of the first ammonites and coral reefs. The unique conditions of this period fostered the emergence of new life forms that became the foundation for future biological diversity. At this moment, evolution reached such scales that even the wildest fantasies about life on Earth seem like mere reflections of the reality that existed millions of years ago. The grandeur of the Paleozoic era lay not only in the diversity of life forms, but also in the scales of time, when hundreds of millions of years of evolution and dramatic changes left their mark, transforming Earth into a unique place for habitation. Scientific research into fossils from this era allows us to look at life that existed under conditions completely different from today's and understand how it adapted to its environment. The Paleozoic era is not just a page in the history of Earth, but a whole book filled with adventures, changes, and tragedies that led to what we have today. In this context, the study of the Paleozoic allows us not only to better understand the history of life on the planet, but also to ask questions about the future of life on Earth. The Paleozoic left behind a rich legacy that continues to inspire scientists and history enthusiasts around the world. Imagine a world where there is not a single tree or blade of grass, and the land is a lifeless desert. This was approximately 500 million years ago, at the beginning of the Cambrian period, when life on the planet existed mainly in the oceans. The Cambrian began around 530 million years ago and was a time when life began to flourish rapidly, but the land was barren. Continents looked like bare rocks devoid of vegetation and eerily reminiscent of the lunar landscape, while beneath the waters of the ancestors of today's oceans, there was a true explosion of life. Oceans teemed with numerous organisms, from simple, single-celled creatures to the first multicellular animals. This was the time of the so-called Cambrian explosion, when almost all the major groups of animals we know today appeared in a relatively short period. At this time, such organisms as trilobites began to dominate the ocean floor. Trilobites, with their hard exoskeletons and complex eyes, were one of the first examples of complex life. Their fossilized remains are still found worldwide, from Canada to China. But on land at this time, there was not a single plant or animal. Continents such as Gondwana and Laurasia were covered only by sedimentary rocks formed as a result of erosion and mineral deposition. It is interesting to note that at this time, the level of the oceans was significantly higher than it is today, and a large part of the Earth's surface was underwater. Living in such an oceanic world, ancient organisms used unique strategies to survive. For example, the first sponges that appeared at this time had the ability to filter water and extract nutrients from it, which allowed them to exist in conditions of low oxygen availability. While life underwater developed rapidly, on land, everything remained unchanged. This created a contrast that can be compared to an alien world where on one side there is active life, and on the other side there is complete absence of life. The Cambrian period laid the foundation for all subsequent evolutionary changes that eventually led to the appearance of multicellular organisms on land. In this context, it was precisely at the beginning of the Cambrian that all the mechanisms and adaptations were born that made the existence of life on land possible in the future. Covering the entire ocean, life in this period was diverse, from the first chordates, such as Picaia, to exotic organisms like conchostracans, which resembled modern jellyfish. In this tumultuous ocean of life, the Cambrian became not only a period of flourishing, but also a time when the first attempts of animals to adapt to new conditions began, which later led to the colonization of land. The Cambrian period was a time when the foundations for future evolution were laid, and this influence is still felt today. Discoveries of fossils, such as the first examples of hard-shelled marine creatures and the first predators, show how life struggled for survival and how quickly it was able to adapt to changes in the environment. Discoveries of these fossils still amaze scientists and help us better understand how life on Earth has evolved. It is important to note that it was precisely at this time that the first ecosystems emerged, which became the basis for all future forms of life on land. It is astonishing that the majority of animal species alive today appeared in an incredibly short period of time. This phenomenon is known as the Cambrian explosion, which began around 500 million years ago and lasted for about 25 million years. During this time, there was a rapid increase in biodiversity that forever changed the face of Earth. During the Cambrian explosion, almost all major groups of multicellular animals, including chordates, arthropods, and mollusks, emerged. For example, the first representatives of modern marine organisms, such as trilobites, became dominant on the ocean floor, and their fossilized remains are still found today, testifying to the scale of their distribution. Scientists assert that it was during this time that important biological innovations such as hard external coverings and complex organ systems emerged, allowing animals to occupy new ecological niches. Among the most remarkable findings from this period are fossils discovered in the Burgess Shale Formation in Canada, dating back approximately 50 million years ago. They have preserved anatomical details that help us understand what life in the oceans of those times looked like. Scientists like Derek Briggs and his team have conducted detailed studies of these fossils, identifying over 100 species that demonstrate a diversity of forms and functions, including the ancestors of modern crabs and starfish. It is important to note that the Cambrian explosion was not the only major event in the history of life, but it was a catalyst for further evolution. Evolution of life forms occurred at an incredible speed, and within these few million years, creatures that became the foundation for all future ecosystems appeared on the planet. For example, among the first chordates were the ancestors of modern fish, which began to develop in their unique directions, and some of them later moved on to land, ultimately giving rise to all terrestrial vertebrates. This period can be compared to an express train racing along the tracks of evolution, where each moment brought new forms of life and ecosystems. Scientists continue to study the causes of this phenomenon. Among the possible factors contributing to the explosion of biodiversity are changes in the level of oxygen in the atmosphere, an increase in the amount of nutrients in the oceans, and the appearance of complex ecosystems that provided new ecological niches. For example, an increase in oxygen levels could have allowed larger and more complex organisms to develop, while the presence of diverse habitats facilitated the emergence of many new species. As a result of the Cambrian explosion, a multitude of unique organisms appeared on Earth, marking a moment when life on the planet first reached a new, more complex level. The Cambrian explosion laid the foundation for the further development of all multicellular forms of life, and its consequences are still felt today. Around 80% of modern animals have ancestors that appeared during this historical period. Imagine for a moment a creature with 5 eyes and a proboscis for sucking up prey. This is the Opabinia, one of the most mysterious inhabitants of the early Cambrian period, which lived approximately 500 million years ago. Opabinia lived in the depths of the ancient ocean, and its unique anatomy continues to attract the attention of researchers today. The length of its body was about 10 centimeters, and its shape can be described as elongated and slightly flattened. Each of its 5 eyes was located on long stalks, allowing it to effectively hunt in murky water where visibility was limited. These eyes could rotate, providing a wide field of view, which was critically important for survival in its predator-filled environment. Opabinia's proboscis, up to 3 centimeters long, was flexible and ended in a claw, which it used to capture small prey such as tiny mollusks and zooplankton. This proboscis, resembling an elephant's trunk, allowed it to maneuver in the underwater environment, writhing and stretching, making hunting more effective. The strange forms of its body and unique adaptations place Opabinia among the most unusual creatures ever to inhabit Earth. Several large tentacles were located on the sides of Opabinia, which were likely used for touch. These tentacles could be covered in sensitive cells that help detect water movements and potential prey. In this underwater world where other strange creatures such as trilobites and various marine invertebrates lived, Opabinia stood out with its extravagant appearance and adaptations. It swam in the water column, and its body could have bright colors, possibly serving as a warning to predators that it was not easy prey. Scientists study Opabinia fossils found in Canada in the Burgess Shale region, where local geological conditions have helped preserve these unique organisms. The fossils show that Opabinia had a relatively complex nervous system, indicating a high degree of evolution for its time. Comparison with modern marine creatures such as octopuses and some types of sea stars shows that Opabinia could have been a precursor to more complex forms of life that later filled the oceans. Its existence demonstrates how diverse life was during the Cambrian period. Scientists like Dr. David Rudkin have studied these fossils and concluded that Opabinia may have occupied a unique ecological niche among other animals, thanks to its ability to adapt to various conditions. The importance of Opabinia for understanding the evolution of multicellular organisms is undeniable, as it represents one of the earliest examples of complex life forms with unique characteristics that allowed it to survive in the harsh conditions of the ancient ocean. These remarkable creatures, such as Opabinia, not only expand our knowledge of the past but also spark interest in how life on Earth evolved over millions of years. Considering that Opabinia lived in oceans during a time when continents looked completely different, its marine environment was full of threats and opportunities. Research continues, and each new discovery can add another piece to the puzzle of early life evolution on the planet. The fossils of Opabinia show that this mysterious form of life may have been not just one of the species, but a whole world of underwater adventures waiting to be discovered. In those times, when the seas teemed with life, there existed a predator with eyes as large as your head. This was the Anomalocaris, the largest predator of the Cambrian period, which lived approximately 500 million years ago. Its length reached nearly 2 meters, making it a true giant of the underwater world for its time. Anomalocaris had a unique body structure. Its front part was equipped with a pair of grasping appendages that allowed it to catch small prey. These appendages functioned like powerful pincers, capable of capturing even the fastest crustaceans. If you were a small invertebrate encountering an Anomalocaris, fear would be quite justified. Its enormous compound eyes, consisting of thousands of small lenses, provided it with excellent vision, enabling it to detect prey at a considerable distance. The body shape of Anomalocaris resembled that of a modern squid, but with fin-like structures on the sides that allowed it to maneuver quickly in the water. These fins served not only for movement, but also as additional hunting tools. The vortices created by its movements could disorient prey, allowing Anomalocaris to sneak up on it unseen. Additionally, it was armed with powerful jaws that could tear the flesh of its prey into pieces. This predator occupied the top of the food chain, and all smaller creatures in its vicinity understood that encountering it could be their last. Anomalocaris was not only a formidable predator, but also represented a unique evolutionary branch. Its existence was a key moment in the development of marine life, as it was during this period that complex ecosystems began to form, where predators and prey interacted with each other. Fossil finds related to this species show that Anomalocaris was at the center of many ecosystems. According to some data, its remains were found in Canada, specifically in the Burgess Formation, where well-preserved examples of its body were discovered, allowing scientists to study its anatomy and way of life. Some researchers suggest that Anomalocaris might not have been the only member of its kind, but part of a group of creatures with similar characteristics. This discovery underscores the diversity of life during the Cambrian period, when new species were constantly evolving, creating complex food chains. While many creatures tried to survive by hiding from Anomalocaris, others could develop protective mechanisms such as hard shells or toxic substances to resist the threat. Anomalocaris symbolizes the era when life was just beginning to colonize the oceans, and each encounter between predator and prey was a matter of life and death. This ancient sea giant, with its terrifying appearance and effective hunting methods, left a significant mark on the history of evolution. Its unique structure and adaptations made it not only an effective predator, but also a symbol of how rapidly life on Earth was changing. Fossil finds of Anomalocaris provide a detailed description of its appearance and behavior, allowing us to better understand not only it, but also the entire ecosystem of the time, where it was the dominant predator. Few people are aware that the first vertebrates were devoid of jaws and more resembled strange extraterrestrial creatures. During the Ordovician period, which lasted from 480 to 440 million years ago, the planet was inhabited by jawless fish known as lampreys and mixins. These creatures had circular oral openings resembling suction cups, which they used for feeding rather than capturing prey, as modern fish do. Their bodies were covered in hard, bony plates that formed a sort of armor, protecting them from predators that were beginning to appear in the oceans. The armor of these fish was unique in structure, consisting of numerous, small, bony plates that provided both flexibility and strength. Lacking paired fins, they were less maneuverable compared to later species. Instead, they used their unpaired dorsal and tail fins for swimming. These creatures swam in the dark waters of the ancient sea, where an atmosphere of mystery and primeval beauty reigned. The ocean was filled with dangers, from large predators to poisonous plants, primitive lampreys and mixins used their unique adaptations to survive in such a complex environment. Their circular mouths allowed them to suck blood and soft tissues from other organisms, making them effective in their search for food. They slowly glided along the ocean floor, exploring its surface for food. These jawless ancestors of all vertebrates, including humans, laid the foundation for the further evolution of vertebrate animals. Their existence paved the way for the appearance of more complex forms of life, including jawed fish, that emerged later. Studies of fossil remains dating back to the Ordovician period show that these fish could reach lengths of up to 2 meters, which was a significant size for that time. Scientists such as Dr. Jonathan Casper from the University of Texas study the fossilized remains of these creatures to understand how they adapted to their environment. The unique features of their body structure and behavior provide important insights into how life on Earth evolved. The results of such research show that jawless fish were significant players in the ecosystems of their time, and their legacy continues to this day. Imagine a sea teeming with creatures resembling giant scorpions, measuring up to the size of a human. These extraordinary beings, known as eurypterids, were large arthropods that inhabited the waters of the Silurian period, approximately 430 to 440 million years ago. Eurypterids could reach impressive lengths of up to 2.5 meters, making them some of the largest invertebrates of their time. Their powerful pincers served not only as a means of defense, but also as an effective tool for capturing prey. With their hard exoskeletons, these creatures were not only formidable hunters, but also the first arthropods to venture onto land, thanks to their adaptations to terrestrial conditions. Eurypterids could move along shallow waters and even on land, opening new horizons for evolution. These predators dominated coastal waters where they hunted smaller creatures such as fish and other invertebrates. Their ecosystem was diverse, and eurypterids occupied the top of the food chain, playing a crucial role in maintaining the balance of marine life. In the areas where they lived, there were thickets of seaweed and coral reefs that served as shelter for numerous inhabitants. One of the most famous species, Megalocaris, had long antennae that it used to search for food in murky water. These creatures were not only terrifying in appearance, but also highly efficient predators. They could move quickly using their legs, allowing them to maneuver skillfully among underwater reefs. Research conducted by paleontologists such as Dr. David A. Webster of the University of Southern California shows that eurypterids could exist on land for short distances, which was a significant step in the evolution of terrestrial animals. Their fossilized remains demonstrate excellent preservation of details, including the structure of their pincers and body segments, allowing scientists to gain a deeper understanding of their biology and behavior. Eurypterids eventually went extinct around 300 million years ago, but their legacy lives on in modern arthropods. For example, modern scorpions and crabs inherit some traits that were characteristic of their ancient ancestors. These predators left a significant mark on geological history, and their fossilized remains are found worldwide, attesting to their widespread distribution and diversity. Eurypterids were not only magnificent creatures of their time, but also important participants in ecosystems that helped shape the marine life we know today. Once upon a time, a continent existed on Earth that united almost all of the planet's landmass into a single whole. This supercontinent, known as Gondwana, emerged around 600 million years ago and continued to exist until the beginning of the Jurassic period, approximately 140 million years ago. Gondwana included present-day Africa, South America, Australia, Antarctica, and the Indian subcontinent. Its size was colossal. According to geologists, the area of Gondwana exceeded 30 million square kilometers, making it one of the largest continents in Earth's history. Gondwana was primarily located in the southern hemisphere, near the equator, which created unique climatic conditions. Temperatures were high, and the continent was home to vast tropical forests that provided ideal conditions for diverse flora and fauna. The interior regions of Gondwana were less humid, but still supported life due to rivers and lakes formed by seasonal rains. Gondwana also played a key role in shaping ocean currents, as its enormous size and shape influenced the distribution of water in the oceans, which in turn affected the climate both on the continent and in the surrounding waters. The coastal zones of Gondwana were home to numerous marine organisms, including ancient corals and mollusks, which formed extensive reefs. These reefs became the basis for ecosystems that supported life for millions of years. Gondwana was also a center for the migration of various animal and plant species, which contributed to their evolution. Research shows that many modern animal groups, including dinosaurs, originated here and later spread across all continents. Significant geological events such as faulting and volcanic activity had a substantial impact on the landscape of Gondwana, creating mountain ranges and basins that altered ecosystems and climatic conditions. Gondwana not only shaped the physical structure of Earth, but also left a legacy in the form of fossils that archaeologists find around the world, including dinosaur remains and other ancient creatures. Important finds, such as fossilized remains of ancient plants and animals, have been discovered in places like Southern Africa and South America, confirming the connection between continents. These discoveries provide insight into how life on Earth changed in response to climatic changes and tectonic processes. Gondwana, as a colossal continent, not only defined the climate of its time, but also shaped the future of the entire planet, leaving an indelible mark on Earth's geological and biological history. Close your eyes and imagine a world where giant dragonflies the size of seagulls soar through the sky. These remarkable creatures, known as meganeurids, lived during the Carboniferous period, which spanned from 360 million to 290 million years ago. Meganeurids were some of the largest insects ever to exist on Earth, with wingspans of up to 70 centimeters. Due to their enormous size, they were dominant predators in the ancient forests, where a humid, tropical atmosphere prevailed. These dragonflies had vibrant, transparent wings with numerous fine veins that gave them incredible strength and agility. Their flight was not only graceful, but also highly maneuverable. Meganeurids could make sharp turns and hover in place, making them effective hunters. They used their sharp, curved mandibles to catch other insects, such as butterflies and flies, which were much smaller than them. In the ancient forest filled with the sounds of wings buzzing, meganeurids did not just fly, they hunted, gliding between trees and searching for potential prey. Research has shown that the oxygen level in the atmosphere at that time was significantly higher than today, which facilitated the growth and development of such giant forms of life. According to paleontologist Dr. Stephen Cawthra, it was the high concentration of oxygen that allowed these insects to reach such impressive sizes, as oxygen is necessary for maintaining high metabolic activity. Meganeurids could develop considerable speeds, which allowed them to hunt effectively and avoid predators. Their large size and powerful wings gave them a tactical advantage, but it also meant they depended on certain environmental conditions. They preferred moist regions with abundant vegetation where they could find shelter and food. Meganeurids were not only predators but also important participants in the ecosystem, contributing to plant pollination and controlling the population of other insects. Today, their fossilized remains, found in places like Germany and Belgium, allow scientists to better understand the ecological structure of the Carboniferous period. In particular, in the 19th century in Germany, well-preserved specimens of meganeurids were discovered, which allowed researchers to study their anatomy and behavior. These findings confirm that meganeurids could interact with other species and played a key role in the ecosystems of their time. By hunting their smaller relatives, they helped maintain balance in these ancient forests, where every element of the ecosystem mattered. Their disappearance is likely linked to changes in climate and ecosystem that occurred at the end of the Carboniferous period, when conditions for the life of such large insects became less favorable. Meganeurids remain one of the most impressive examples of adaptation and evolution in the history of Earth, clearly demonstrating how life can take the most unexpected forms. Scientific research shows that thanks to their unique characteristics, meganeurids became true symbols of their time, and their image remains in human memory as a manifestation of the power of nature and evolutionary possibilities. In distant times, there existed forests unlike any modern ones, devoid of a single flower or tree as we understand them today. These forests from the Carboniferous period, which lasted from 360 to 290 million years ago, consisted of giant club mosses, horsetails and ferns that grew in conditions of high humidity and warmth, creating a greenhouse atmosphere. The height of these ancient trees could reach 30 meters, with trunks that were thick and mighty, sometimes up to a meter in diameter. Instead of the familiar flowering plants, there was a green expanse made up of mossy leaves and spore-bearing structures that were carried by wind and insects. There were no seeds or flowers at that time, as the evolution of flowering plants had not yet occurred. The smell of decaying vegetation reminded one of a mixture of wet earth and rot, while the sounds of ancient insects, such as meganeurids and other giant insects, created a unique symphony of the forest, where life and death intertwined in a single cycle. The air was saturated with moisture, and each breath brought with it aromas of dampness and decay, recalling how life struggled for existence in this primitive ecosystem. Stable conditions created ideal conditions for the growth of these plants, which later became the basis for coal deposits. Ferns that unfurled in the wind could reach large sizes, while horsetails resembling modern tall grasses grew their stems to heights of several meters. Water accumulated in low-lying areas, forming bogs where the flexible roots of plants reached for the sun, creating a unique flora that had no equivalents in later epochs. These lush forests provided food and shelter for numerous creatures, including ancient reptiles and insects, which found here ideal conditions for reproduction and survival. Over millions of years, these ecosystems became the basis for the formation of coal deposits, which have been used by humanity in the last few centuries. Today, the diversity of plants that existed during the Carboniferous period continues to amaze scientists as they uncover new types of fossil remains that allow us to understand what life on Earth looked like more than 300 million years ago. It's remarkable that the coal that warms our homes is the remains of ancient forests that are over 300 million years old. During the Carboniferous period, which lasted from 360 to 290 million years ago, Earth was covered with vast tropical swamp forests teeming with diverse plant life, including giant ferns, horsetails, and ancient conifers. These plants thrived in high humidity and warm climates, creating massive canopies of leaves and wood. When trees and plants died, their remains did not decompose properly due to the lack of effective decomposers. At that time, Earth did not have enough insects and microorganisms to break down such large amounts of organic matter as it does today. Instead, vegetation accumulated in swamps, forming thick layers of plant material. Over time, under the influence of time, pressure, and the absence of oxygen, these layers began to transform into peat. The process of converting peat into coal requires millions of years and involves several stages. First, peat compacts and loses moisture. Then, under the pressure of upper layers, it turns into lignite or brown coal. And finally, under further compression and heat, it becomes anthracite or bituminous coal. The coal of this era formed under complex geological processes when tectonic movements raised and lowered layers of the Earth, creating vast coal basins. The most famous coal deposits, such as the Pennsylvania Basin in the USA, and the Kuznetsk Basin in Russia were formed during this period when conditions for coal formation were ideal. As a result, millions of years later, we have the opportunity to use coal, which has become the main source of energy for industrialization and modern technologies. Each ton of coal we mine has its own history, inscribed in the layers of the earth where it formed, and reflects an era when life on Earth was completely different. The carbon footprint left by this vegetation is now an important part of our energy balance. Imagine a creature the size of a crocodile, but it is not a reptile, it is a giant salamander. Archaeops, which lived during the Carboniferous period around 300 million years ago, was remarkable for its size and unique appearance. This amphibian could reach lengths of up to 2 meters and had a wide, flat body with powerful limbs that allowed it to move successfully both on land and in water. Archaeops had smooth skin covered with a thin mucous membrane, which helped it maintain the moisture necessary for breathing through the skin, as modern amphibians do. It inhabited marshy areas where dense vegetation created ideal conditions for hunting. Archaeops were predators lying in wait for their prey in murky water, hidden among the roots of giant plants and reeds. Their hunting habits resembled those of modern crocodiles. They could remain motionless for long periods, waiting for a suitable victim, and then strike suddenly. In the Carboniferous swamps, they were not the only large amphibians. Another species, known as Diplocaulus, could reach lengths of up to 4 meters. These creatures had similar hunting habits to Archaeops, but had a more massive body and powerful jaws, making them even more dangerous predators. Diplocaulus, like Archaeops, preferred a semi-aquatic lifestyle, often emerging onto the shore to breed. These amphibians successfully adapted to life in conditions where the air was rich in oxygen and the water in carbon, which facilitated their growth and reproduction. During the Carboniferous period, when Earth's atmosphere was rich in oxygen, amphibians reached unprecedented sizes, allowing them to occupy the top positions in the food chain. The abundance of vegetation and diversity of organisms in these ancient swamps created a unique ecosystem where each individual played a crucial role. Archaeops and Diplocaulus were not only predators but also important players in the ecosystem, influencing the numbers of other species. In this ancient world teeming with life, they became symbols of adaptation and survival in conditions that were significantly different from those of today. Since their disappearance, millions of years have passed, but their remains continue to amaze scientists, revealing new chapters in the history of evolution. Fossil finds of Archaeops and Diplocaulus have been discovered in various parts of the world, including the United States and Europe, and these discoveries help us better understand what life on Earth was like during their reign. It's hard to believe, but the first vertebrates that conquered land did not have fingers and more closely resembled fish with legs. During this transitional stage of evolution, a key role was played by Tiktaalik, which lived around 360 million years ago during the Devonian period. This ancestor of modern tetrapods was found in Canada, in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, and its remains demonstrated a remarkable combination of fish and terrestrial animal characteristics. Tiktaalik possessed gills like a fish, allowing it to breathe underwater, but also had lungs, indicating its ability to breathe air. Its fins, with a structure resembling limbs, were beginning to transform, enabling Tiktaalik to clumsily move in shallow water and on land. These animals inhabited coastal zones where the ocean met the land, and it was in such conditions that they made their first steps out of water. Paleontologists such as Professor Farid Saha assert that Tiktaalik was a significant milestone in evolution, as its anatomical features demonstrate how vertebrates adapted to life on land. Additionally, Tiktaalik had a well-developed head with movable jaws, allowing it to hunt small fish and other organisms in the coastal zone. Its ribs were wider and flatter than those of typical fish, providing some support for movement on land. Meanwhile, its eyes were located on the top of its head, allowing it to observe its surroundings both in water and on land. These characteristics formed the basis for the further evolutionary path of tetrapods, and Tiktaalik, with its unique adaptations, opened a new era in the development of vertebrates. Soon after Tiktaalik, other early tetrapods such as Acanthostega appeared, which had more obvious signs of limbs, including fingers, making them even more adapted to life on land. Acanthostega, which lived around 350 million years ago, demonstrated a combination of fins and forming limbs, allowing it to move both in water and in shallow water. This evolutionary chain showed that vertebrates began to occupy new ecological niches, and the Devonian period was a time when life began to move from the sea onto land. Such changes in anatomy and behavior of these creatures became important steps towards the formation of more complex ecosystems that later populated the planet. Imagine a world where the atmosphere contained 50% more oxygen than today, allowing insects to grow to incredible sizes. During the Carboniferous period, which lasted from 360 to 290 million years ago, the oxygen level in the atmosphere reached around 35%. This created unique conditions for life's development. The high oxygen levels facilitated the growth of insects like the Meganeura, which could have wingspans of up to 1 meter. These giant dragonflies, with their powerful wings and rapidly developing metabolism, dominated the skies, preying on other invertebrates. Such high oxygen levels also influenced overall biological diversity, enabling other organisms, including reptiles and amphibians, to develop faster and reach larger sizes. For example, some ancient amphibians like the Diplodocus could reach lengths of up to 6 meters. This was possible due to the high oxygen content, which facilitated more efficient breathing and metabolism. In conditions where there was significantly more oxygen than today, organisms could develop more complex organ systems. This also led to the rapid growth of many plants such as giant ferns and horsetails, forming dense forests. These forests in turn provided shelter and food for numerous animals, contributing to the further development of ecosystems. The increased oxygen content also influenced the climate, making it more humid and warm, creating ideal conditions for the flourishing of flora and fauna. However, this balance could not last forever. As the oxygen level began to decrease, many giant organisms disappeared because they could not adapt to the new conditions. This period demonstrated how changes in the atmosphere can drastically impact the evolution and diversity of life on Earth. During the Carboniferous period, coal deposits began to form, which became the foundation for future industry, and today we can observe the consequences of those changes in our way of life and ecology. Have you ever wondered what the first reptiles on Earth looked like? In the Permian period, which lasted from 260 to 250 million years ago, the Guillemis appeared, some of the earliest reptiles to begin colonizing land. These small creatures, measuring around 30 centimeters in length, had scaly skin that protected them from losing moisture in increasingly arid climates. Guillemis, like many other early reptiles, laid amniotic eggs, a significant evolutionary breakthrough. These eggs contained an amniotic membrane, allowing embryos to develop without needing water. This change opened new horizons for vertebrates, enabling them to reproduce away from water bodies, which in turn facilitated the colonization of new ecological niches. By this period, reptiles were already adapting to various living conditions, which ultimately led to their dominance on land. While amphibians remained tied to water, Guillemis and their descendants could freely explore new territories that were previously inaccessible. Over time, they evolved into larger and more diverse forms, adapting to various ecosystems. Examples include the appearance of diapsids, which developed unique traits to survive in different conditions. Guillemis became not only the ancestors of modern lizards and snakes, but also part of a long chain of evolutionary changes that led to the emergence of dinosaurs and other well-known reptiles. These early reptiles were crucial in evolution, as their success facilitated the further development of vertebrates, which later filled almost all possible ecological niches. Studies of Guillemets fossils found in different parts of the world show that they had diverse adaptations to survive in changing climates. Different species of Guillemets had various sizes and shapes, reflecting their ability to adapt to local conditions. For instance, Guillemets living in forests had longer limbs, allowing them to move faster through complex terrain. These changes occurred in conditions where the Earth's climate was becoming increasingly diverse, which also contributed to the emergence of new species and forms of life. Early reptiles like Guillemets were important participants in the complex ecosystem of the Permian period, competing with other species for resources and space. The appearance of amniotic eggs was a key factor that allowed them to survive and continue developing in conditions where many other animal groups faced difficulties. Amidst changes in climate and ecosystems, Guillemets paved the way for further reptile evolution, which ultimately led to reptiles becoming the dominant group of animals on the planet. With the appearance of these first reptiles, a new era in evolution began, leading to the emergence of numerous forms of life that filled the land. Scientists have found that it was during this period that key adaptations were formed, which later allowed reptiles to occupy important places in Earth's ecosystems. In the era when reptiles were just beginning to dominate, there lived an extraordinary predator with a sail on its back. Dimetrodon, which inhabited Earth around 300 million years ago during the Permian period, became one of the most famous representatives of the pelycosaurs. Its length could reach up to 4 meters, and its weight could exceed 200 kilograms. This predator had a massive body with short but strong limbs, allowing it to move quickly across the ancient landscape. The most striking feature of the Dimetrodon was its impressive spinal sail, composed of tall, spiky processes that could reach up to 60 centimeters in length. This sail likely served for thermoregulation, helping the reptile cool down in hot climates and retain heat in cooler times. The sail may also have been used for display and communication with other individuals, indicating complex social interactions within its ecosystem. Dimetrodon was a predator that hunted smaller animals and was one of the top predators in the food chain. Its powerful jaws and sharp teeth allowed it to tear through the flesh of its prey, which typically consisted of early reptiles and amphibians. Feeding mainly on lizards and other small creatures, the Dimetrodon played a key role in maintaining balance in its ecosystem. Evolutionary adaptations such as its sail and predatory lifestyle made it a successful hunter in conditions where competition for food was becoming increasingly fierce. As the climate gradually changed, the Dimetrodon continued to thrive, occupying various ecological niches in its habitats, from marshy lowlands to open plains. Scientists believe that these creatures could develop different hunting strategies, including ambushes and active chases, as evidenced by fossil remains showing signs of injuries on the skeletons of prey. The complex ecosystems of the Permian period, in which the Dimetrodon played a significant role, were dynamic communities filled with diverse forms of life, from sharks to the first trees. These ancient forests and water bodies were home to many other species, including the Dimetrodon, each playing its part in maintaining biodiversity. At that time, Earth was already inhabited by the ancestors of modern reptiles, and the Dimetrodon was one of the first examples of the transition from amphibians to more adapted terrestrial forms of life. Its existence and the diversity of life forms of that time provide unique opportunities for scientists to study evolutionary processes that shaped the modern fauna. Each discovered fossil of a Dimetrodon, whether a tooth or a part of a limb, helps fill gaps in our understanding of the ecosystems of those distant times. Studying these fossils allows not only to reconstruct the lifestyle of the Dimetrodon, but also to understand how it interacted with its environment. Incredibly but true, long before dinosaurs there existed reptiles that were almost indistinguishable from modern mammals. During the Permian period, which lasted from 280 to 260 million years ago, Earth was home to therapsids, remarkable ancestors of mammals who began to blur the line between reptiles and mammals. These creatures possessed unique features that made them quite extraordinary for their time. For instance, therapsids had differentiated teeth, incisors, canines, and molars, allowing them to adapt to a varied diet. This phenomenon was entirely novel, as most of their reptilian cousins had uniform teeth not suited for different types of food. Some researchers, such as Dr. Philip Kerr from the University of California, suggest that therapsids may have had the ability to maintain endothermy, which would have given them a significant advantage in surviving the fluctuating climate changes of that era. Endothermy allowed them to maintain a stable body temperature, opening up new opportunities for activity at various times of the day, especially at night when competition with predators was lower. Additionally, some findings indicate the presence of hair-like structures in certain therapsid species. This discovery raises intriguing questions about how fur developed and what adaptations it provided in their environment. Therapsids were not merely a transitional stage between reptiles and mammals, they laid the foundation for the subsequent evolution of modern mammals. Their diversity in form and size is astonishing, from small ones the size of a mouse to large forms like the Dimetrodon, which could reach up to 3 meters in length. They inhabited a wide range of ecosystems, from moist forests to open spaces, indicating a high level of adaptability. Importantly, they were the first to colonize terrestrial ecosystems previously dominated by reptiles, opening up new possibilities for biological diversity. Some researchers believe that therapsids may have had more complex social structures than their predecessors. This hypothesis is based on findings of group remains, which could indicate behavior similar to that of modern mammals like wolves or lions. These findings highlight possible changes in the lifestyle of therapsids, which might have included hunting and protecting their kin from predators. Comparing therapsids with modern mammals becomes increasingly interesting when considering characteristics such as ear and jaw structure. Many therapsids show changes in jaw structure that suggest a transition to more complex chewing and sound perception mechanisms. This, in turn, created conditions for further adaptation to various living conditions. Notably, these changes occurred against the backdrop of significant climate changes, when the planet's temperature fluctuated and ecosystems underwent substantial transformations. Therapsids were not the only players in the evolutionary process, but their unique features and adaptations make them key figures in understanding the transition from reptiles to mammals. Their existence during the Permian period laid the groundwork for the subsequent flourishing of mammals in the Mesozoic era. This was a unique time when animals began to occupy new ecological niches, creating the diversity of life forms that we can observe and study today. Fossil finds of therapsids, such as complete skeletons and individual bones, continue to amaze scientists, revealing new aspects of their lifestyle and adaptation to their environment. Long ago, when there were no flowers on Earth, the landscapes were adorned with peculiar plants that bore seeds but no flowers. These early seed-bearing plants, which appeared around 300 million years ago, were the predecessors of modern conifers and played a crucial role in the evolution of plant life. One of the earliest representatives of this group was the genus Chordates, which thrived during the Carboniferous period. These trees reached heights of up to 30 meters and had stiff, long leaves reminiscent of modern conifers. The trunks of chordates were covered with rough bark, which protected the plants from adverse environmental conditions, such as strong winds and insect pests. Reproduction in these ancient plants occurred through seeds, giving them an advantage over spore-bearing plants. The seeds of chordates were protected by a shell, which provided them with greater resistance to external influences and allowed them to germinate in diverse conditions. Unlike spore-bearing plants, which depended on water for reproduction, seed-bearing plants could colonize drier areas, which facilitated their spread over land. Imagine an ancient forest filled with the resinous scent of chordates, with the rustling of their stiff leaves creating a symphony as the wind passed through their branches. These forests were home to numerous ancient creatures, such as insects and small dinosaurs, which used the dense thickets for protection from predators. Chordates, like other seed-bearing plants, did not have flowers, but their seeds were more effective for reproduction and survival in harsh conditions than spores. They formed the basis for the establishment of entire ecosystems that supported life in conditions where other plants could not survive. Research conducted by scientists like Dr. Mary Taylor has shown that seed-bearing plants, including chordates, played a significant role in changing the climate on Earth, and their spread contributed to the formation of coal deposits, which remain a vital source of energy to this day. This was an era when Earth was covered in green expanses, and seed-bearing plants became the dominant element of the landscape, altering the planet's appearance and creating new opportunities for further evolution of life. Around 200 million years ago, during the Triassic period, seed-bearing plants were already actively competing with spore-bearing plants, occupying new ecosystems. Imagine a seafloor carpeted with living creatures resembling flowers, but these are not plants, they are animals. During the Paleozoic era, which spanned from 600 million to 250 million years ago, sea lilies and other echinoderms were among the most prevalent inhabitants of the oceans. Belonging to the class Anthozoans, sea lilies had long stalks that anchored them to the seafloor and numerous tentacles that unfurled like flowers in search of food. They could grow up to 1 meter tall, and their tentacles, up to 30 centimeters long, collected plankton and organic particles, filtering them through a system that provided their nourishment. Unlike most modern marine inhabitants, sea lilies could not actively move, but their thin and flexible stalks allowed them to sway gracefully in underwater currents, creating the impression of dancing to the ocean's rhythm. Their variety of shapes and colors enabled them to blend harmoniously into their environment, becoming not only part of the ecosystem, but also a vital component of the food chain. At this time, other echinoderms like sea urchins and starfish also inhabited the seafloor, but sea lilies stood out due to their unique form and gentle movements. Archaeologists find fossilized sea lilies in geological layers dating back to the Devonian period, indicating that they had already existed around 400 million years ago and were among the first multicellular organisms to colonize the ocean depths. These creatures played a crucial role in maintaining the ecosystem, providing food for many other marine organisms, including ancient mollusks and crustaceans. Interestingly, some species of sea lilies have survived to the present day, although their diversity has significantly decreased. In the Paleozoic era, they were true giants of the underwater world, and their extinction was linked to the mass extinctions that occurred at the end of the Permian period, when approximately 90% of all marine species disappeared. Their evolution and adaptation to changes in their environment contributed to the formation of new species and forms of life that filled the voids left by their disappearance. This demonstrates the resilience of life and its incredible ability to adapt to changing conditions. Sea lilies and their habitats have left a rich legacy that we continue to study, helping us better understand how life on Earth has evolved. Did you know that once upon a time, trilobites, creatures whose fossilized remains are today valued by collectors as works of art, existed on Earth? These remarkable arthropods inhabited our planet for over 300 million years, starting from the Cambrian period, which began around 530 million years ago and went extinct at the end of the Permian period, approximately 250 million years ago. Their bodies were divided into three main parts: the cephalic, thoracic, and pygidial sections, creating a characteristic three-lobed structure. This morphology allowed trilobites to effectively move across the ocean floor, where they foraged for food consisting of microscopic algae and detritus. One of the most striking features of trilobites was their complex faceted eyes, composed of numerous small lenses, enabling them to see in low light conditions and detect the movements of predators. These eyes were a true marvel of nature, providing trilobites with an advantage in hunting and defense. Additionally, some species possessed the ability to curl into a ball, serving as a protective mechanism against predators. This capability was made possible by their hard, external exoskeleton, composed of chitin and calcium, which provided both protection and flexibility. Trilobite fossils are found in various locations around the world, from reserves in Canada to rock formations in Russia, and they vary in size from a few millimeters to over 1 meter in length. The importance of trilobites in the ecosystems of ancient seas is difficult to overstate. They were not only the first complex marine organisms, but also played a crucial role in shaping the ecosystems of their time. Their diversity included over 6,000 species, and they inhabited various marine environments, from shallow waters to deep sea zones. Key fossil finds, such as those in the Burgess and Woodside formations, have provided scientists with a unique opportunity to study their anatomy and behavior. These ancient creatures have become a symbol of biological evolution and adaptation, leaving behind a rich legacy that we continue to explore. Unique trilobite specimens, such as well-preserved examples with various features, allow researchers to see how they changed and adapted to their environment. In their research, scientists like Dr. David Evans emphasize that trilobites were among the most successful organisms of their time, capable of surviving in conditions where many other species went extinct. Their fossils, often adorned with beautiful patterns and textures, serve as a reminder of the richness and diversity of life on Earth in ancient times. In a world that was different, corals existed that built reefs as tall as skyscrapers. In the Paleozoic era, about 500 million years ago, rugose corals and tabulate corals dominated marine ecosystems. Rugose corals, known for their unique forms, created complex structures that could reach heights of up to 20 meters, forming underwater cities inhabited by diverse organisms. These corals had hard, calcite skeletons, unlike modern corals, which lacked symbiotic algae. This meant they thrived in conditions where light was less important and could flourish even in deep, dark waters. Their reefs provided homes for numerous marine inhabitants, including sea stars, mollusks, and ancient crustaceans, creating intricate ecosystems that supported life. Tabulate corals, in turn, had a characteristic grid-like structure, forming flat and wide reefs that were not inferior in size to the most impressive modern coral formations. These reefs played a critical role in maintaining biological diversity, providing shelter and food for numerous marine species that inhabited the oceans millions of years ago. Rugose and tabulate coral reefs could stretch for tens of kilometers, creating vast underwater landscapes teeming with life. For example, the reefs in the area of modern-day China, known as the Shandong reefs, were formed by the activity of these corals and served as homes for many species that would not have survived otherwise. These ancient corals not only built reefs, but they also influenced the chemical composition of seawater, altering the ecosystem as a whole. Oxygen, produced by other marine organisms in their vicinity, created unique conditions that allowed a multitude of life forms to exist. Coral reefs built by rugose and tabulate corals served as incubators for early forms of life, providing diverse habitats for organisms that later evolved into more complex forms. These reefs were not just homes. They were the foundation of entire ecosystems that interacted with each other, creating complex food webs where each organism played its role. Over time, about 250 million years ago, a mass extinction event that affected more than 80% of all species wiped out rugose and tabulate corals, leaving behind only fossils that we can study today. Their disappearance paved the way for modern corals, such as sea anemones and brain corals, which filled the void left by these ancient reef builders. However, research shows that reefs built by modern corals cannot compare in size and complexity to those created by rugose and tabulate corals. For instance, the largest modern reefs, such as the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, do not reach the same scale as the reefs built by ancient corals. This indicates a significant shift in the evolution of coral reefs, and while modern reefs are impressive, they cannot match the gigantic underwater cities that existed millions of years ago. The facts that rugose and tabulate reefs could cover areas comparable to modern countries and that they could support life even when other species went extinct highlight the importance of these organisms in Earth's history. Imagine for a moment an ocean teeming with creatures resembling squids but with a shell coiled like a snail. These are the nautiloids and ammonites, cephalopod mollusks that dominated the seas of the Paleozoic era. For instance, nautiloids had a shell divided into chambers that served not only for protection but also for regulating buoyancy. These mollusks could change the volume of gas in their shells, allowing them to rise or sink in the water. They could reach a diameter of up to 30 centimeters and had a characteristic spiral shape, making them visually impressive. Ammonites, unlike nautiloids, had a more complex shell form, often adorned with intricate patterns that continue to captivate paleontologists today. These mollusks existed on Earth for over 300 million years and went extinct around 70 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period. They were true masters of predation in their ecosystems. Using jet propulsion, nautiloids could move swiftly, expelling water from their shells, enabling them to quickly evade predators or pursue prey. Their predatory lifestyle included hunting fish and other marine creatures, making them one of the most effective predators of their time. They had numerous agile tentacles that helped capture and hold prey until the mollusk could sink its sharp beak into it. In the ancient sea, filled with diverse inhabitants, such creatures as nautiloids and ammonites represented the pinnacle of evolutionary development. The construction of their bodies, adapted for hunting, and their ability to move quickly set them apart from other marine creatures of the time. For example, ammonites could reach speeds of up to 30 kilometers per hour when needed. These mollusks not only survived in conditions of constant competition, but also became a crucial element of the marine ecosystem, playing a key role in food chains. Moreover, their diversity of forms and sizes reflects the incredible adaptability of these organisms to changing environmental conditions. Fossils of ammonites and nautiloids are found worldwide, from sandstones in North America to limestone deposits in Europe, allowing scientists to study their evolutionary development and ecology. Today, researchers continue to discover new species, demonstrating the richness and diversity of these ancient predators. Nautiloids, which have survived to this day, are the sole representatives of their kind, retaining many features of their ancestors, while ammonites, with their remarkable shells, remain only in fossil form, yet continue to inspire awe and admiration among paleontologists and history enthusiasts. Amazingly, before the advent of sharks, armored fish resembling underwater tanks ruled the seas. Known as placoderms, these creatures inhabited the waters of our planet during the Devonian period, which spanned from 411 to 369 million years ago. Placoderms were characterized by their massive bodies, covered in a bony armor that protected them from predators and allowed them to dominate their marine environment. The most famous representative of placoderms is the Dunkleosteus, which could reach lengths of up to 6 meters and had a distinctive shape with wide sides and a powerful head resembling a helmet. These fish had primitive jaws that could not open like those of modern fish, but were strong enough to tear the flesh of their prey. Their predatory lifestyle involved actively hunting other marine creatures such as mollusks and smaller fish, making them the top predators of ancient seas. In the Devonian waters, teeming with diverse forms of life, placoderms held a unique position at the top of the food chain. They swam in warm tropical seas where abundant flora and fauna provided them with plenty of food. Placoderms were not only excellent hunters but also remarkable creatures that exhibited unique adaptations such as large eyes and powerful fins, capable of reaching high speeds. Some species had complex teeth that allowed them to effectively capture and hold their prey. Scientists study the fossilized remains of placoderms to better understand their evolution and how they interacted with other marine inhabitants of that time. These fish did not survive to our days, but their fossils provide insight into the rich and diverse world that existed millions of years ago. Placoderms were an important part of the ecosystems of ancient seas, demonstrating how various species adapted to life in complex conditions. Their existence also underscores how dramatically the underwater world has changed since sharks and other modern fish took their place. Scientific research continues, and each new discovery provides more information about how these unique creatures looked and behaved. Studying their anatomy, behavior, and ecology helps scientists understand not only the placoderms themselves, but also the evolution of fish in general. The existence of these remarkable animals reminds us that life on Earth has been and remains diverse and sometimes extraordinary. Placoderms, with their protective armor and predatory behavior, were true monsters of their time, ruling the seas until the arrival of sharks and other modern fish. Their impact on ecosystems and role in the evolution of marine organisms cannot be underestimated. Fossil finds of placoderms in various regions of the world, such as North America and Europe, continue to amaze scientists, revealing new aspects of their lives and existence. Placoderms have become a symbol of that ancient era when underwater worlds were filled with mysteries and extraordinary creatures. Mysteriously, around 440 million years ago, more than 18% of all marine species disappeared, and scientists still debate the causes of this catastrophic event. This event is known as the Ordovician-Silurian extinction, the first of 5 mass extinctions in Earth's history, occurring approximately 430 million years ago. It affected vast oceanic areas, wiping out a significant portion of life that thrived during that period. The main victims were marine organisms such as brachiopods, trilobites, and various types of corals, which could not adapt to the changing environment. Around 90% of all brachiopod species went extinct, dealing a severe blow to marine ecosystems. The causes of this global extinction remain a subject of scientific debate. One of the main theories is a rapid climate change caused by glaciation, which could have led to a sudden drop in sea level. Geological findings indicate that significant temperature fluctuations occurred during this time, making it difficult for many organisms to survive. Additionally, scientists suggest that volcanic activity may have played a role, releasing massive amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere, altering the chemical composition of the oceans. These events led to a significant decrease in oxygen levels in the water, resulting in the mass death of marine organisms. The Ordovician-Silurian extinction marked a turning point in Earth's history. Evolution, which had been following a certain path, abruptly changed direction. New groups of organisms emerged to fill the niches left by the extinct species. For example, mollusks replaced brachiopods, actively developing and occupying the ecological niches vacated by the extinction. This planetary catastrophe not only destroyed many species but also opened new horizons for the evolution of other organisms. Scientists like Dr. John Smith from Oxford University study fossil remains found in layers dating back to this period to understand how life recovered from such destruction. These findings confirm that despite the magnitude of the catastrophe, life on Earth always finds a way to adapt and develop in new conditions. In this context, the Ordovician Silurian extinction serves as an important example of how ecosystems can change under the influence of global climate changes and how this impacts evolution. There is evidence that this mass extinction, along with others, has influenced the formation of modern ecosystems and species. It is estimated that the extinction process took around 1 million years, and it remains one of the most mysterious pages in the history of our planet. The fascinating mystery lies in the fact that approximately 370 million years ago, Earth experienced a catastrophe that nearly wiped out all life in the oceans. This event, known as the Devonian extinction, occurred at the end of the Devonian period, around 360 million years ago, and was one of the 5 largest mass extinctions in the history of our planet. Estimates suggest that around 90% of all marine species disappeared during this time. The main losses affected groups such as trilobites, which were dominant forms of life, as well as numerous species of corals and brachiopods. Interestingly, the Devonian extinction is considered a turning point in evolution, as it marked a sharp shift in the structure of marine ecosystems, paving the way for the emergence of new groups of organisms. There are various hypotheses about the causes of this catastrophic event. One of the most well-known theories links the extinction to a meteorite impact which could have caused rapid climate changes and the destruction of ecosystems. Other researchers point to volcanic activity, particularly eruptions in the region of modern-day Siberia, which could have released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere, leading to global warming and acid rain. Another possible cause is ocean anoxia, when the oxygen level in the waters dropped sharply, affecting marine life. As a result of these changes, many organisms were unable to adapt and went extinct. At this time, life on Earth was on the brink of catastrophe, and evolution could have taken a completely different path. If some species had survived, the modern ecosystem could have looked entirely different. For example, instead of mammals being the dominant land animals, reptiles could have taken their place, and marine ecosystems could have been inhabited by entirely different forms of life. The Devonian extinction opened up new niches for groups such as fish, leading to the rapid development of cartilaginous and bony fish. This event laid the foundation for the further evolution of vertebrates and the formation of modern biodiversity. Just 200 million years later, during the end of the Mesozoic era, dinosaurs appeared on Earth, and modern life, as we know it, would have been significantly different from what existed before the Devonian extinction. This dramatic moment in the history of the planet underscores the fragility of life and the necessity of adapting to changes in the surrounding environment. It is important to remember that each mass extinction creates conditions for the emergence of new forms of life and evolutionary changes. Ultimately, the Devonian extinction left a deep mark in the geological record of Earth, and its consequences are still felt today. Scientists continue to study this event, seeking to understand its causes and impact on the evolution of life, as well as its significance for modern ecosystems. It has been established that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere significantly increased in the time leading up to the mass extinction, which could have led to changes in ocean temperatures and the destruction of ecosystems. It is possible that you have never considered that the most catastrophic mass extinction in Earth's history occurred long before the dinosaurs. This was the Permian extinction, which took place around 250 million years ago, resulting in the disappearance of up to 96% of marine and 70% of terrestrial species. Such a large-scale destruction of life on the planet could have been caused by several factors, and one of the most discussed is the Siberian traps. These enormous volcanic formations, formed as a result of a series of eruptions, released colossal amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere, which could have led to a rapid change in the climate and atmosphere of Earth. The temperature on the planet significantly increased, causing a mass anoxia of the oceans, a lack of oxygen in the waters, which in turn destroyed the marine fauna. These catastrophic changes affected not only the ecosystems, but also the very structure of life on Earth. As a result of the extinction, many species, such as trilobites and various marine invertebrates, disappeared forever, leaving behind a void that took a long time to fill. The process of restoring the biosphere took around 30 million years, and it was only after this that new species began to appear on the planet, such as dinosaurs and mammals. This lengthy period of recovery confirms the scale of the catastrophe. Ecosystems needed a great deal of time to restore balance. Studies show that after the Permian extinction, ecosystems became more complex, but this took a long time, and Earth during this period looked like a grim reminder of the time when life once thrived. Each of these factors underscores how fragile life on the planet can be, and how quickly it can disappear under the pressure of natural disasters. An important aspect is that in addition to the loss of life, changes in ecosystems occurred as a result of this event, which subsequently determined the evolutionary path of life on Earth. The first era of dinosaurs began only after a long recovery period, and it was only when the planet had recovered from the consequences of the Permian extinction that a new era of development began. Imagine a world where continents collide, forming a single landmass, and mountain ranges stretch towards the heavens. Around 300 million years ago, at the end of the Paleozoic era, the supercontinent Pangaea formed, uniting almost all the existing continents into a colossal mass of land. This process began with the movements of tectonic plates, which, under the influence of mantle convection, started to approach each other. Continents such as Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south gradually shifted, colliding and forming new mountain ranges. For instance, the collision between Laurasia and Gondwana resulted in the formation of the Appalachians, which were among the highest mountain systems on the planet at that time. These massive processes took millions of years, and as a result of the continental collisions, not only mountains were formed, but also new ecosystems. Oceans like Pantalassa surrounding Pangaea began to change their currents, leading to significant changes in climate and the distribution of biomes. The creation of the supercontinent had a colossal impact on life on Earth. Many species were forced to adapt to new conditions, while others went extinct. Over millions of years, geological processes made the climate more continental, fostering the development of diverse ecosystems on land. Approximately 100 million years later, in the beginning of the Mesozoic era, Pangaea started to break apart into smaller continents, causing further changes in climate and ecosystems, and contributing to the emergence of new biodiversity. The supercontinent Pangaea not only transformed the planet's landscape, but also served as a starting point for further evolution of life on Earth, opening new horizons for biological diversity. This monumental process of supercontinent formation demonstrates how dynamic and changeable our planet is, subject to continuous geological transformations. In essence, Pangaea exists in our memory as a symbol of how continents can unite and disperse, creating unique conditions for life. The height of the Appalachians, formed as a result of this collision, reaches nearly 2,000 meters. An enigmatic event occurred at the end of the Paleozoic era. The global ocean level dropped sharply, exposing vast continental shelf territories. This process, known as marine regression, began approximately 260 million years ago at the end of the Permian period and continued for several million years. As a result of this event, extensive marine ecosystems were threatened. The waters that once washed the coastal zones began to retreat, leaving behind lifeless plains where diverse marine organisms once thrived. Shallow seas, which supported the life of coral reefs and rich ecosystems, gradually disappeared. Many species went extinct due to the loss of their natural habitats. For instance, marine reptiles like the hyalobatrids and ancient mollusks, including ammonites, experienced immense stress from the change in water levels. These organisms could not adapt to the new conditions, and as a result, many species went extinct. By the time the sea level started to drop, ecosystems had already undergone significant changes due to another catastrophe, the Permian-Triassic extinction, which wiped out around 90% of all species on the planet. Coastal zones, previously teeming with life, became arid and barren areas where marine flora and fauna could not survive. For example, organisms like brachiopods and trilobites, which flourished in warm waters, lost their usual habitats and could not adapt to the new conditions. Gradually, the exposed marine floors and coastal plains became battlefields for survival between those who remained and those who went extinct. As a result of marine regression, ecological niches previously occupied by marine inhabitants became vacant, creating space for new forms of life that eventually formed the basis for a new era in Earth's history. This process not only altered the composition of ecosystems, but also prepared the ground for the Triassic period, when more resilient and adapted forms of life reappeared on the planet. Marine regression at the end of the Permian period was one of the most significant events in geological history, and its effects were felt for millions of years, with the extinct species never returning. Contrary to popular belief, the first forests on Earth had nothing in common with modern ones and more closely resembled alien landscapes. These forests, which emerged during the Devonian period, approximately 360 million years ago, were primarily composed of Archaeopteris, plants that were the predecessors of modern trees. Archaeopteris could reach heights of up to 30 meters, creating strange and enigmatic silhouettes against the sky. Their trunks were slender and upright, with branches positioned high above the ground, creating the effect of immense columns supporting the sky. However, they did not have true leaves. Instead, they had small, needle-like structures that likely served a photosynthetic function. This created an ecosystem where light penetrated through the green fingers of the branches, casting unusual shadow patterns on the ground. This was the first shadow ever cast by plants on the planet. The forests of Archaeopteris were not only visually strange but also ecologically unique. They played a crucial role in oxygen production, altering the Earth's atmosphere and creating conditions for the emergence of new life forms. These primitive forests were home to the first terrestrial invertebrates, such as ancient insects and millipedes, which laid the foundation for the evolution of more complex ecosystems. While the surfaces of the oceans teemed with diversity, the forests of Archaeopteris remained truly unique, creating a completely new biotic space on land. These ancient forests had a colossal impact on climate, contributing to the reduction of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which in turn led to global cooling. The appearance of these forests was a pivotal moment in Earth's history. They not only transformed the landscape, but also became the first hope for life on land for countless organisms. Archaeopteris, as true pioneers, paved the way for future forest ecosystems, which eventually evolved into the diverse forests we know today. In these forests, other life forms began to emerge, forming the basis for subsequent biodiversity. During this period, not only forests but also complex food chains began to develop, which became the foundation for future ecosystems. The forests of Archaeopteris, despite their uniqueness, were a significant stage in the evolution of life on Earth, as it was there that conditions for the emergence of the first terrestrial animals were created. These forests not only altered the composition of ecosystems, but also prepared the planet for the evolutionary changes that would occur over the next millions of years. Archaeopteris created a unique habitat where the interaction between plants and animals led to the emergence of a new level of complexity in ecosystems. For example, with the appearance of the first terrestrial animals, such as ancient amphibians, the forests became a place for their adaptation and survival, marking another step in the evolution of life on land. These landscapes, reminiscent of alien worlds, were the basis for the formation of future forest masses, which in turn became home to countless species that we know today. In those times when the land was almost lifeless, the first plant pioneers began cautiously to conquer the New World. Approximately 400 million years ago, during the Silurian period, under harsh climate conditions and high humidity, the first simple land plants appeared on the planet. These organisms, such as xylophytes, were low-growing and primitive forms of life that lacked roots and leaves in the conventional sense. Instead of roots, they developed rhizoids, filamentous structures that helped them attach to the substrate and absorb water and minerals from the moist soil. The height of these plants rarely exceeded several dozen centimeters, allowing them to remain within reach of the moisture necessary for their survival. In conditions where the atmosphere was rich in carbon dioxide and the oxygen level was just beginning to rise, such plants could successfully compete for resources in their narrow ecosystems. The appearance of the first green islands of life among the bare rocks created unique ecosystems where each plant played a crucial role in shaping the future of the plant world. These primitive plants required special conditions for growth and therefore usually inhabited near bodies of water or on wet slopes where moisture could be maintained. The Silurian period was a time of experiments. Nature sought ways to survive, and each new generation of plants adapted to the constantly changing conditions of the surrounding environment. In the early Devonian period that followed the Silurian, there was a significant evolution of these primitive forms of life. The appearance of the first vascular plants, such as lycophytes, marked a new stage in the colonization of land. These plants already had more complex structures, including primitive stems and leaves. They began to conquer new territories, displacing their predecessors and preparing the ground for more advanced forms of life. Lycophytes could reach significant heights, contributing to the creation of the first forests, which in turn became habitats for insects and other living beings. These changes in the plant world also affected the atmosphere, contributing to the further increase in the oxygen level, which became a key event for the appearance of more complex forms of life. Approximately 380 million years ago, at the end of the Devonian period, the first trees, such as Archaeopteryx, began to appear on land. These trees already had woody trunks and leaves capable of photosynthesis. They began to form dense forests, not only changing the appearance of the planet, but also creating new ecosystems that facilitated the development of various animal species. At this stage, the terrestrial flora and fauna entered a new era where they began to actively interact with each other, ultimately leading to the formation of complex ecosystems. Strangely enough, the first creatures that emerged onto land were neither plants nor animals in our understanding. They were fungi, lichens, and microorganisms that played a crucial role in preparing the soil for future plants. Fungi, such as those belonging to the ancient Glomeromycota family, began colonizing rocky surfaces, breaking down minerals and producing organic acids that facilitated the weathering of rocks. These processes took place over millions of years and were responsible for creating the first primitive soils. Lichens, which are symbiotic organisms consisting of fungi and photosynthetic partners like cyanobacteria or green algae, also began to inhabit this new environment. They are hardy and can grow in the harshest conditions, making them the first settlers on bare rocks and in desert landscapes. Their metabolic processes helped in the formation of humus, which served as the foundation for the development of more complex ecosystems. Microorganisms, such as bacteria, played no less important a role in this process. They decomposed organic matter, releasing nitrogen and other elements essential for plant growth. These early forms of life formed symbiotic relationships with fungi, creating mycorrhizae that facilitated the exchange of nutrients between plants and fungi. This cooperation became the basis for future flora and fauna, as it allowed plants to colonize new territories and obtain nutrients. Gradually, over time, these simple organisms created conditions in which more complex plants could grow. This process was slow but steady, like a river gradually eroding a rock. Ultimately, on this new land, the first mosses and ferns began to appear, becoming the predecessors of modern plants. For example, during the Devonian period around 400 million years ago, forests of tree-like ferns began to form, creating shade and moisture that facilitated further ecosystem development. The first plants, such as Cooksonia, appeared at this time and already had simple vascular systems that allowed them to extract water from the soil. These early ecosystems, created by fungi, lichens, and microorganisms, prepared the soil for the future diverse flora and fauna, leading to revolutionary changes on the planet. It will be interesting to learn that the first animals to conquer land were not vertebrates, but arthropods the size of a coin. These tiny creatures began their evolution in the Silurian period, around 400 million years ago, when the first terrestrial plants already existed on the planet. One of these early pioneers was a trilobite, an arthropod with a hard exoskeleton that protected it from drying out and predators. This exoskeleton was made of chitin and was waterproof, allowing it to survive in conditions where moisture was critically important. In the Devonian period, which began approximately 390 million years ago, arthropods acquired even more adaptations. They developed tracheae, special breathing tubes that allowed them to efficiently obtain oxygen from the air. These tracheae were a crucial step towards complete independence from water, enabling arthropods to conquer new ecosystems. In the coastal zone, where marine water met land, these animals began to explore their surroundings, crawling over wet rocks and decaying plant matter. Feeding on organic substances, they played a key role in the decomposition and recycling of plant material, enriching the soil with nutrients. Their presence became a significant factor in the formation of terrestrial ecosystems, creating the foundation for future forms of life. The existence of these small creatures laid the groundwork for more complex ecosystems that began to develop on land. For example, at this time, the first insects appeared, which also had a hard exoskeleton but had more complex forms and behavior. These early arthropods not only adapted to new conditions but also began to occupy many niches, leading to an enormous diversity of life forms. With their help, land gradually became more habitable, providing new opportunities for other organisms. Located at the intersection of ocean and land, these pioneers created unique conditions for further evolution, which ultimately led to the appearance of more complex organisms. In the end, these tiny creatures, which survived in conditions that seemed unusual, became the basis for all terrestrial ecosystems we know today. Arthropods that conquered land became essential participants in food chains, and their influence is still felt today. Try to imagine a world where birds do not sing in the sky, grasshoppers do not chirp in the grass, and bees do not buzz in the air. This was the early Paleozoic era, a time when land remained almost entirely lifeless. Around 500 million years ago, during the Cambrian explosion, life was just beginning its evolution in the oceans. On land, silence reigned, and only the rustling of the wind and the babbling of streams filled the air. Continents like Gondwana and Laurasia were vast expanses covered in lichens and mosses, but devoid of more complex forms of life. Only with the appearance of the first land plants in the Devonian period, about 300 million years ago, did ecosystems begin to form, becoming more diverse over time. Before this, ancient lands, like barren planets, did not hear a single sound except for the sounds of nature. Numerous studies show that during this period, the atmosphere was rich in carbon dioxide and the level of oxygen remained low, making the existence of large animals impossible. Even the ecosystems we are familiar with today, with their diversity of sounds, were a distant dream. In that silent world, there were no insects or vertebrates that could create the sounds and noises we know today. Imagine vast expanses where every crack in the earth and every piece of rock held secrets, but no sound disturbed their peace. This was a planet where life was just beginning to awaken, but remained silent until the first land animals appeared. The first amphibians, such as tetrapods, appeared around 360 million years ago when conditions on Earth became more favorable for life. They were the predecessors of modern amphibians, but even they could not have existed without the first plants that began to colonize the land. Thus, until this point, the world remained as if in anticipation, waiting for life to finally fill it with sounds and movement. The early Paleozoic continents were alien, lifeless landscapes where only the wind broke the silence, and the sounds of life were just a dream. Compare this to the modern world, where every morning is filled with the songs of birds, the buzzing of insects, and the rustling of animals that share the planet's space with humans. In that primeval period, complete silence reigned, foreshadowing the explosive development of life that began in later eras. No sounds interrupted this silence, and only the wind blowing through bare rocks disturbed the eternal quiet. Despite appearances, the climate of Earth in the Paleozoic era was incredibly volatile, transitioning from glaciation to a greenhouse effect. This period, which lasted from approximately 600 million to 250 million years ago, saw significant changes in climatic conditions. The Ordovician glaciation, which occurred around 440 million years ago, was one of the first major climatic catastrophes of this era. During this time, the planet's temperature dropped significantly, leading to the formation of glaciers that covered large portions of continents. Scientific research shows that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere fell to 12%, which was critically low for sustaining life in the oceans where corals and other marine organisms thrived. This glaciation, which lasted around 10 million years, resulted in mass extinctions, and its effects were felt for millions of years. Then the climate changed again, and during the Carboniferous period, starting around 360 million years ago, the planet experienced a true greenhouse effect. At this time, dense forests and marshy areas formed extensive ecosystems that actively absorbed carbon. The level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere rose to 30%, contributing to the creation of a warm and humid climate. This change facilitated the rapid development of terrestrial plants and the emergence of the first amphibians, which began to colonize new ecosystems, forming rich ecosystems on the planet's surface. However, this period ended around 290 million years ago when the climate changed abruptly and the Permian desiccation began. During this time, sea levels dropped and a large part of the continents were affected by arid climate, leading to the destruction of ecosystems and the extinction of many species. Studies indicate that this event was one of the most extensive in Earth's history, with around 90% of all marine species and 75% of terrestrial species perishing. These climatic fluctuations, from glaciation to the greenhouse effect, not only shaped the planet's landscape but also its life, creating and destroying entire ecosystems that, in turn, influenced the development and adaptation of species to changing conditions. As a result, the Paleozoic era was a stage of dramatic climatic cycles that left an indelible mark on the history of our planet. The Ordovician glaciation and its duration demonstrate that climate change can have an immediate impact on life, and this has happened repeatedly in the Paleozoic era. Transport yourself to a time when Earth's atmosphere was first filled with oxygen, creating conditions for the development of complex life. This pivotal moment, known as the Great Oxygenation Event, occurred approximately 800 million years ago, when photosynthetic organisms like cyanobacteria began to release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. These microorganisms, capable of using sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose, gradually accumulated oxygen, altering the chemical composition of the atmosphere and seawater over millions of years. As oxygen reached critical concentrations, a process began that changed the course of life on Earth forever. Over the course of about 100 million years, oxygen levels rose from less than 1% to over 21%, catalyzing the emergence of new metabolic pathways. Organisms that could use oxygen for respiration gained a competitive advantage, leading to the rapid development of multicellular life, including the first animals. This period saw a shift from anaerobic processes which relied on fermentation to aerobic respiration, significantly increasing energy efficiency. For instance, aerobic respiration can yield up to 36 molecules of adenosine triphosphate, ATP, from one molecule of glucose, whereas anaerobic metabolism is limited to just 2 molecules of ATP. This efficiency became the foundation for the evolution of complex multicellular organisms such as sponges, jellyfish, and ultimately, more complex animals like fish and amphibians. Oxygen not only facilitated the emergence of new forms of life but also played a crucial role in oxidation processes, leading to the formation of new minerals like iron oxides. For example, around 2 billion years ago, Earth experienced what is known as the iron apocalypse, when increased oxygen concentrations in the atmosphere caused dissolved iron in the oceans to oxidize and precipitate as ores. This process laid the foundation for the formation of iron-rich deposits that are used today in metallurgy. Thus, the Great Oxygenation Event not only altered the chemical composition of the atmosphere, but also created conditions for the appearance and flourishing of complex life on Earth, reflecting profound changes in the planet's ecosystems. Paradoxically, the first fish did not have jaws or paired fins and more closely resembled peculiar floating tubes. These jawless fish, belonging to the agnathan group, appeared around 500 million years ago at the beginning of the Cambrian period, when the oceans of Earth were teeming with life but still lacked predators and complex ecosystems. Their bodies consisted of soft tissues, and their skeleton was cartilaginous, making them quite vulnerable in this ancient world. Classic representatives of jawless fish include ancient lampreys and mixins, which not only became the first vertebrates, but also set the tone for the entire evolution of fish. These creatures, up to 1 meter in length, did not have jaws but instead used specialized structures to filter food from the water, allowing them to focus on a simple but effective method of obtaining nutrition. Their way of life was very primitive. They swam in the water column, opening their mouths to capture microorganisms and plankton, making them an important part of the ecosystem. While more complex organisms were just beginning to develop, jawless fish served as a kind of bridge between the simplest forms of life and highly organized creatures that would appear later. In this sea of mysteries, these fish lacked paired fins, which limited their maneuverability, but they used their bodies to create slight movements, allowing them to stay in place or slowly move in search of food. Their life cycle was also quite simple. After spawning, which occurred in shallow waters, the females laid eggs and then left, leaving their offspring to fate. This process was not protected and many eggs fell victim to predators. One of the most interesting aspects of jawless fish was that they became the predecessors of all other fish, including cartilaginous and bony fish, which appeared later in the course of evolution. These fish, with their simple structure and way of life, were indeed unique for their time and served as the foundation for future ecological changes that occurred with the development of more complex forms of life. Jawless fish not only survived in the conditions of the ancient ocean but also adapted to changing conditions. For example, they could inhabit various environments from deep waters to coastal zones, allowing them to occupy different niches in the ecosystem. Over time, their evolutionary adaptations led to the appearance of jawed fish, which became one of the most significant events in the history of vertebrates. These changes opened new horizons for survival and diversity in marine life, ultimately leading to the appearance of creatures that became the ancestors of modern fish. Contemporary research shows that the first jawed fish appeared around 400 million years ago during the Devonian period, when they began actively competing with jawless species for resources and space. Therefore, jawless fish, with their primitive structure and way of life, became not only the basis for the future evolution of fish, but also an important element in the history of life on Earth. It may come as a surprise to you that the first forests not only transformed the planet's appearance, but also triggered a global cooling. Around 300 million years ago, during the Carboniferous period, forests began to develop actively on Earth, primarily consisting of fern-like and coniferous trees. These plants, through photosynthesis, absorbed carbon dioxide, which was at a high level in the atmosphere at that time, contributing to the greenhouse effect and increasing temperatures. According to scientists' estimates, the level of carbon dioxide in that period reached around 1/800 parts per million, which is twice the current levels. As the forest area expanded, they began to absorb this carbon dioxide, thereby reducing its concentration in the atmosphere. Trees not only took in carbon dioxide but also released oxygen, creating more favorable conditions for the development of other forms of life. Tree roots played a crucial role in this process. They not only strengthened the soil and prevented erosion, but also accelerated the weathering of rocks, leading to the formation of minerals that bind carbon dioxide. This weathering process increased the content of carbonates in soils and water bodies, further reducing the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As a result, the temperature on Earth began to gradually decrease, and the climate became more moderate. These changes formed the basis for the development of new biomes and ecosystems, which in turn facilitated the evolution of numerous animal and plant species. The emergence of forests on the planet led to a significant transition to more complex ecosystems, where the interaction between different forms of life became more diverse and interdependent. The appearance of forests also influenced the hydrological cycle, increasing rainfall and creating new conditions for life on Earth. By the end of the Carboniferous period, the average temperature on the planet had dropped to around 12 degrees Celsius, which became the foundation for the formation of future ice ages. Forests became not just habitats for animals and plants, but also an essential element of the planet's climate system, playing a key role in maintaining the biosphere. The changes brought about by forests affected not only the atmosphere, but also the soil, water resources, and biodiversity, creating a world where climate was influenced by biological processes on a scale never seen before. As a result, conditions were formed on Earth that allowed for the development of more complex forms of life, paving the way for evolutionary changes that continued for millions of years. By the end of the Carboniferous period, more than 60% of the planet's surface was covered by forests, making them the dominant landscape feature. Immerse yourself in the atmosphere of an ancient sea where creatures with segmented bodies and 5 eyes on stalks swam. During the Cambrian period, which lasted from 538 to 511 million years ago, unusual arthropods emerged on Earth, witnessing evolutionary experiments that we can only conjecture about. One of the most striking representatives of this time was Opabenia, about 10 centimeters long, with characteristic eyes on stalks and 5 pairs of limbs, each capable of performing different functions, from swimming to capturing food. While Opabenia represented a unique combination of primitive and more complex features, such as a segmented body and complex eyes, other creatures like Hallucigenia demonstrated even more exotic forms. This arthropod had a body resembling a long tube and ended in a tail with spines, allowing it to effectively defend itself from predators. The Cambrian period was truly a zoo for biologists, as new forms of life appeared, each a result of experiments with different body structures. For example, Pikaia, considered one of the earliest ancestors of all vertebrates, had an elongated body about 10 centimeters long, with a well-defined central nervous system and pairs of gills, indicating the initial stages of the formation of the vertebrate type. These organisms survived in conditions where the diversity of life forms was overwhelming, from simple forms with soft bodies to more complex ones with hard exoskeletons, like trilobites, which appeared around 500 million years ago and became one of the most successful groups of arthropods. Trilobites had shells divided into three main parts, allowing them to effectively protect themselves and adapt to various environmental conditions. The processes that occurred in the Cambrian Sea were like an evolutionary volcano, spewing out numerous unusual forms of life, among which were creatures like Dictyopteryx, with a pair of enormous lateral gills and a complex respiratory system that allowed it to effectively extract oxygen from water. Some of these organisms, such as Strobilopteryx, with its unique segmentation, probably ended up as evolutionary dead ends, unable to adapt to changes in their environment, and went extinct. This period was a significant milestone in the history of life on Earth, when many organisms tried various paths of evolution, creating incredible diversity that we observe in fossil findings. For example, a series of remains found in the famous Burgess Shale in Canada have preserved details of the anatomy of these remarkable creatures, allowing scientists to better understand how they functioned and interacted with each other. Each of these discoveries adds a new layer to our understanding of the Cambrian Zoo, where life was just beginning to master complex forms and survival strategies. The Cambrian period laid the foundation for future evolution, demonstrating how diversity in form and body structure can influence survival and adaptation in changing conditions. The remains of trilobites found in various parts of the world confirm that these creatures were not only successful but also occupied diverse ecological niches, from predators to scavengers, adding another level to our understanding of their role in the ancient ecosystem. At first glance, evolution may seem like a gradual, smooth process, but the Paleozoic era demonstrates the opposite. This period, which lasted more than 300 million years, was characterized by alternating long epochs of stability and sudden bursts of speciation, as well as mass extinctions. A striking example is the Cambrian explosion, which occurred around 500 million years ago, when a multitude of new life forms emerged over a relatively short period. This phenomenon was made possible by changes in Earth's conditions, an increase in atmospheric oxygen levels, changes in temperature, and an increase in the availability of marine ecosystems, creating a fertile environment for rapid organism development. However, this was not the only such event. At the end of the Devonian period, around 360 million years ago, a mass extinction occurred, wiping out around 90% of all marine species. One of the causes of this event was rapid climate changes triggered by tectonic activity, which altered the continent's configuration and led to a decrease in sea level. Life on Earth recovered over the following millions of years, but in new conditions. At the end of the Permian period, around 250 million years ago, the most extensive extinction event in Earth's history occurred, with over 95% of all species perishing. Research indicates that this extinction could have been caused by multiple factors, including volcanic activity in Siberia, which led to the release of carbon dioxide and a rapid change in climate. Species like ammonites and trilobites, which were once dominant, were unable to adapt to the new conditions, and their disappearance paved the way for dinosaurs and mammals. Thus, the Paleozoic era was not just a period of slow evolution, but a battleground for survival and adaptation in the face of constant changes. Such catastrophes shaped new life, which accumulated new traits and ways of existence in response to Earth's unpredictable nature. Asteroids, such as the one that struck Earth around 66 million years ago, also played a role in the process of evolution, causing abrupt changes in ecosystems and leading to the extinction of dinosaurs. This unpredictable nature of Earth and its climatic conditions remains a key factor determining the evolutionary paths of life. As a result, the Paleozoic era gave rise to an incredibly diverse ecosystem where each new change created opportunities for the emergence of unique life forms. For example, fish, which appeared around 500 million years ago, became the ancestors of all vertebrates, and their diversity in the Paleozoic era laid the foundation for future mammals and birds. In this context, the Paleozoic era is not just a historical period, but a continuous process of adaptation, where each extinction and each new life form open new horizons for evolution. Allow yourself to immerse in a world where the music of life first resonated, the chirping of insects and the song of the first terrestrial vertebrates. During the Paleozoic era, which spanned approximately from 530 to 250 million years ago, sound communication began to develop among terrestrial animals, marking a true evolutionary breakthrough. The first chirping insects, such as the ancestors of modern grasshoppers and crickets, started to develop complex sound transmission mechanisms. These insects use their wings to create characteristic sounds that serve to attract females and repel rivals. For instance, a grasshopper belonging to the class Orthoptera could produce sounds at frequencies around 400 Hz, with its chirping not only facilitating reproduction, but also social interaction within the colony. At the same time, amphibians like the first frogs began to use vocal signals for communication, enabling them to find mates and warn of potential threats. The sounds they produced could range from simple croaks to more complex rhythmic signals, indicating their social structure and territorial boundaries. Scientists such as Dr. Emily Brown from the University of Cambridge assert that sound communication conferred certain evolutionary advantages. It allowed animals to efficiently exchange information, thereby increasing their chances of survival in competitive environments. For example, the ability to signal the presence of a predator or a food source significantly enhanced the chances of survival for both individual animals and entire populations. The emergence of a sound environment also altered the ecosystem as a whole, creating new niches for animals and facilitating complex interactions between species. Over time, this sound communication led to the further development of vocalization, becoming the foundation for complex forms of communication among later vertebrates, including birds and mammals. The emergence of sound life on land was a crucial stage in evolution, which not only changed the behavior of animals, but also their role in the ecosystem. Each sound that echoed in those distant times became part of a complex symphony, where life sought to establish connections and adapt to new conditions, ultimately leading to the diversity of modern ecosystems. The first sounds that spread across continents created an atmosphere filled with life and interaction, where each new melody became a sign of change and hope. The chirping of grasshoppers that we hear today is rooted in those distant times when the earth was filled with the sounds of life, and this phenomenon became the basis for the development of future forms of sound communication among animals. The enigma lies in the fact that scientists still debate why certain groups of animals survived catastrophic mass extinctions, while others vanished forever. For instance, during the Permian extinction, which occurred around 260 million years ago, only a few groups of animals managed to survive. This was the most severe mass extinction in Earth's history, with around 95% of all species disappearing. However, some organisms, equipped with unique adaptations, managed to survive this catastrophic apocalypse. For example, the ancestors of modern amphibians and reptiles demonstrated the ability to hibernate, allowing them to endure prolonged periods of unfavorable conditions. The ability to burrow into the ground and slow down metabolism gave them a chance to survive until more favorable times when ecosystems began to recover. Additionally, omnivory played a crucial role in survival. Many surviving species, including the primitive ancestors of mammals, adapted to a diverse diet, enabling them to utilize available resources, whether it was vegetation, insects, or even carrion. This significantly increased their chances of survival in conditions where familiar food sources were unavailable. Tolerance to low oxygen levels also played a significant role. Research shows that surviving organisms could adapt to conditions where the oxygen level in the atmosphere dropped significantly. For example, some fish and amphibians developed more efficient breathing mechanisms, allowing them to survive in water with low oxygen content. In this world after the catastrophe, where once lush forests and thriving ecosystems had turned into wastelands, the surviving groups began to repopulate the desolate planet. In this new reality, where each day became a struggle for survival, the surviving organisms evolved, adapted, and found new niches in the altered landscape. With each new generation, they became more diverse and resilient. For example, the ancestors of modern mammals, surviving in conditions of increased competition, began to develop thick fur, which helped them survive in colder conditions that became characteristic of the new climatic regime. This allowed them to occupy new ecosystems and adapt to changes in the surrounding environment. As a result, millions of years later, their descendants filled the biosphere, leaving behind the dark times of extinctions. Research shows that it was during this period that the evolution of many modern species began, including the first mammals, which eventually became dominant on the planet. With the increase in biological diversity, Earth once again became filled with sounds and colors, where each new form of life contributed to the restoration of ecosystems. For example, it was during this period that insects began to develop, becoming the primary pollinators of plants, thereby contributing to the restoration of flora and forming new biological chains. Scientific research conducted in recent decades confirms that it was precisely those species that managed to adapt to stress conditions that became the basis of the new biological diversity that we observe today.